Welcome to IP Goes Pop, your source for exploring the interface between intellectual property and pop culture. The IP Goes Pop podcast series is created and produced by Volpe Koenig, an intellectual property law firm based in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Visit us at vklaw.com. This program should not be considered legal advice. Please consult an attorney for your specific situation. And now your hosts, intellectual property attorneys, Michael Snyder and Joseph Gushue.
Greetings and cheers, listeners, and welcome back to another episode of IP Goes Pop. If you've been listening to us, you may already know that this is the podcast that looks at the intersection of popular culture, movies, music, TV, games, toys. We'll talk about all of those things today, and intellectual property, patents, trademarks, copyrights, trade secrets, licensing, what have you. A lot of interesting issues. This episode of IP Goes Pop, we're going to refer to as the shortest yard, and this is dedicated to the sport of football. That's American football. We may do another episode on international football, but let's bring in co-host Joseph Gushue of Volpe Koenig. Joe, thank you as always. Great to hear your voice on the line.
Yeah, it's always good to be back and recording another episode with you.
And I know this is a topic near and dear to your heart, which we will get into. Also, we are very lucky this week to have an outside guest. We have reached that level where we can ask people to be on our podcast and they will start to say yes. And we were lucky enough to get a yes from, this is Quinn, President and CEO of IPWatchdog. First of all, welcome, Gene. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Listen, can you just right up front tell our listeners a little bit about IPWatchdog? It's obviously a website and articles and blogs that are known to Joe and I as, practitioners in the IP world, but I think it would be interesting for other people to hear a little bit more about it.
Yeah, sure. IPWatchdog has been around for 22 years. It's hard to imagine it's been going that long. It seems like almost yesterday it started. It was something I started back in 1999. I just started posting things that I was writing to the internet, and then lo and behold, realized people were reading these things I was posting. And then I figured I could probably turn that into a business. And it's kind of evolved over time from trying to attract clients to becoming really a publication. And we're the largest publication in the patent and innovation space. And we also write about trademarks and copyrights and trade secrets as well. I'm a patent attorney, so patents and innovations is where my heart is. But I like all things IP, and it's hard to resist the opportunity to talk about the intersection of America's pastime and intellectual property.
Well, Gene, I hope people go to the website, IPWatchdog.com, and check it out. And we're actually going to talk about some things you've covered at IPWatchdog. But first, as always, let's set the table. Now, when I think football, I think of the frozen tundra. I hear John Facenda's voice narrating a very gritty documentary or program where you see players, with huge coats and heated benches and the smoke coming out and teeth are missing. And, it's a different era, I think, of current state of football. By the way, we are releasing this right before the Super Bowl. As we do not know who the actual participants are, I'm going to take a guess and say, I may be way off, but I'm going to take a guess, and I'm going to say congratulations to the Eagles and the Dallas Cowboys. First time two teams in the same division could actually be in the Super Bowl. So congratulations.
Well, if you predict Tom Brady is going to be in the Super Bowl, you're probably going to be right more often than you're wrong.
Yeah, that's a pretty safe bet to make. But we'll see. We'll see where we go. We have a long way from now until then. And it'll be entertaining, that's for sure. I know everyone's going to be watching.
Yeah.
So I obviously there are many football movies that we can think of. I wanted to run through a few. I wanted to get Gene and Joe's take on those. I'm going to start with one that I consider a classic, The Longest Yard from 1974. So this is the Burt Reynolds Longest Yard.
Former football player, Burt Reynolds there. at Florida State, and he was actually roommates with Lee Corso. I know that's well known to some people following College Game Day and everything, but just a little interesting fact there. But yeah, I can't say I was very familiar with the original Longest Yard, although Burt Reynolds, I see him in many movies later in his career, but definitely not the most experience with this version. I'm more familiar with the Adam Sandler version, sadly. But I know, Gene, this is one.
Well, just a second, Joe. I actually thought the Adam Sandler, I guess it's a remake. It's not really a reboot, but I think they did okay with it.
I think the right term is a reimagination of the story.
Well, I think so. I really like the original Longest Yard, and I identify more probably with that than the remake. I remember watching the Adam Sandler version sometime when I was not feeling well. I was homesick, and I thought to myself, well, let me just throw this in. There's nothing going on right now. And if I'm going to be disappointed, I might as well be, disappointed, and get it out of the way. And I really enjoyed it, which for a remake is, I think, really hard because you go into it with such high expectations, particularly when you like the original. And I think what made that work, and I think this is lost on a lot of remakes, is they either go too far away from the original or they stay too close to the original. And it was clearly an Adam Sandler movie, but it really paid homage to the original in all of the important, appropriate ways that if you like the original, you were still going to like the Adam Sandler version.
Yeah, I agree, because it hit the beats of, down and out. You're obviously trapped. You have no other outlet. This is your one chance to get back at the people who've been keeping you down. And I think they did. I felt that as well. Of course, I am a big fan of the original, and it has one of these. We could do spoilers. It's 1974, for goodness sake. I mean,
right? If you haven't seen it yet,
it's like someone mentioning E.T. and someone saying, "Oh, no spoilers. I haven't seen it." Well,
no spoilers. Yeah, that movie's 40 years old. I'm going to get around to that at some point.
But it has this iconic kind of final scene where it builds the tension with Burt Reynolds. I think everyone who hasn't seen it should see it. So another football movie. I'm going to fast forward in time a lot to Any Given Sunday. When you look at the cast of Any Given Sunday, we have, Oscar winner and perennial nominee Al Pacino. We have Oscar winner Jamie Foxx. We have rapper and television celebrity LL Cool J. We're kind of all over the board here. Jim Brown was in there, as I think maybe he was the defensive line coach. You have Lawrence Taylor, an actual player. So we're really talking about a varied cast here. And this was an Oliver Stone joint, which I forgot about and was reminded about.
Yeah, that was definitely modernized the league as you're comparing your setting of the table with the frozen tundra and everything. This movie set in a fictional team in Florida, definitely a more modern NFL, and look at some of the antics the players would get into, which I think are very much amplified, but definitely entertaining and sort of a look at a modern and sort of the dirtier side of football, modern football anyway.
Yeah, definitely a little bit more gritty and a bit more the dirty side. But when you're talking about the John Facenda stuff, it is interesting because I grew up watching that stuff as well, and I could hardly think of a better voice to be the narrator.
Mm-hmm.
But I wonder what impact it has for younger people who grew up and watched like Any Given Sunday and were influenced by that portrayal of the sport and those actors and those football players playing in that movie. Because when I do think of football and the stories and sit around with friends talking about the old times and the old timers and best quarterbacks and best running backs and things, it's hard not to have John Facenda's voice running through your head.
Exactly. My thought bubble is, the Green Bay Packers that day took the field. That's what I kind of hear.
Yep.
Anytime I think football, and you're right. They really did capture something there. And it is a generational thing as well, whereas Any Given Sunday was very flashy.
Right.
And a lot of quick cuts, which is Oliver Stone.
Right. But to bring back to IP for a minute, you wouldn't necessarily think of that, but that became so identified with the telling of the NFL story. And it really is the identifiable, and it's not a trademark. It's more like a name and likeness type right, I suppose. But it's so fundamental to conjuring up that feeling and bringing back warm and fun memories of when we were kids and really just learning about the game.
That was NFL Films, which is right in the backyard of where our law firm is in Philadelphia, right across the bridge there in New Jersey. That did so much to package and sell the NFL and make it the product that it is today. And you're seeing it even more recently, sort of how NFL Films helped package and sell the NFL. What Netflix did with Formula One and the series that they released on that, again, packaging it, telling a bit more personal stories between some of the stars in that sport have really surged in popularity. So I think there's a lesson to be learned with that.
Well, there really is. And this is going to maybe cascade us away just very briefly from this topic. But in a former life, I was actually co-owner of an independent record label.
Mm-hmm. I like where this is going, actually.
So I know a bit about the music industry. And I can tell you it's all about packaging, because there are so many great talents out there that are undiscovered. And you just look at people, like I always used to say, do you think that people were lining up clamor over Britney Spears because she had a great singing voice? And no, they really weren't. She had a lot of other things going for her other than her voice. And so the guys liked her because of the way she looked, and the girls liked her because they wanted to be her, and they liked the way she danced and all the other things that go along with that. And it's about packaging. And if you can package something properly, you could really almost get somebody to buy a rock, and I'm saying that on purpose, right? You remember the pet rock,
And there's digital rocks people are buying too. So it's crazy stuff. It's, there's.
This is kind of unbelievable to myself, but I forgot this in leading up to the show. I worked with Bert Bell, son of Bert Bell, the National Football League commissioner from 1946 to 1959, and he filed a trademark application with us on the slogan "On Any Given Sunday," because his father coined the phrase originally, and there are a few people who do attribute the phrase to his father. So to keep it alive, he actually filed for On Any Given Sunday on T-shirts. And I had forgotten that I had done that till now when we were talking about that movie. But it then came up, obviously, and became almost in the public lexicon when the movie came out. And now people will certainly think about the movie. I want to ask a question of both Joe and Gene. So I'm probably a bit more of a basketball fan, but let me ask this. What is the Hoosiers of football? What movie has the same gives you the same kind of feeling and has the same kind of flavor, if you will, as Hoosiers does to basketball? What would be the Hoosiers of football?
Well, I would say, like the obvious choice, and maybe it's simply a college movie, but I think it also has a lot of the same feel. It's got to be Rudy, right?
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, Rudy is just, it's that great feel-good story. It's a true story. It's almost unbelievable, but that's college sports, right? I actually, the older I get, I prefer college football more to pro football for a lot of reasons. And the whole college football story is one where people are out there doing what they love just because they love doing it. Nothing captures that more than, I think, Rudy.
Oh yeah, and the underdog story is sort of the same feel for it. Also, both happen to be set in the Midwest here, also. But yeah, definitely. And Rudy, Sean Astin, Jon Favreau, and even Vince Vaughn, all in that film too. A bunch of actors. Sean Astin obviously being in films before that, but the other people having big careers after that film.
Yeah. And I look at him and I always see Rudy. No matter what else he's in, he's been in the Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings, or
Oh yeah. What's Rudy doing in Middle
yeah,
Earth?
I know. Why is he walking around looking like that?
Yeah.
I'm certain that Sean Astin has more people in one day yell Rudy at him than anyone named Rudy.
Yeah, probably.
He's like, hey guys, I have a long career in Hollywood. Why?
Right.
I was in Goonies. At least yell Goonies stuff at me. Like, why is it Rudy stuff all the time?
I'm going to skip now to another part of popular culture, the toys of popular culture, and the iconic Nerf football. It's hard to even think about ways that a sport has pervaded the popular culture without, and this is technology putting something in the hands of kids. I actually remember the day in the schoolyard in West Philadelphia public school when someone brought the first Nerf football, and it was orange, and we all kind of gathered around it, and we looked at it and we were like, yes, this is good. This will be it. Now, of course, heaven forbid you left it out in the rain for 2 seconds. It was totally destroyed. Any experience with the Nerf football?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think like everybody had to have a Nerf football growing up, right? I mean, it was great, and I had a swimming pool out back, and when they did get wet, they were quite a different thing to throw.
I mean, the Nerf football was great, and then I remember I'm looking at it now. It's called the Vortex football, but there was a football at a time where they put like a propeller on the back of it.
Yep.
Too.
Yes.
So they took that Nerf football technology. They're like, all right, how can we make this even better? Let's slap a propeller on this thing. And I remember throwing that, a ton as a child. Just so fun. Not a wet football, but one that would go a lot further this way.
Yeah. Well, the nice thing about the Nerf was anybody could throw it, right?
Yep.
And you're almost easier to throw a perfect spiral if you couldn't throw a football naturally, right? If you threw it very weakly, it would just, so it made the game approachable by anybody, including, young kids. And I think that has to, if somebody wanted to do some kind of a psychology research paper, a PhD or something like that, that has to have contributed to Americans' love affair with football.
Yeah, just much more approachable for young people playing with that, getting their start.
Right. I mean, because when you're at a much younger age, you could actually go outside and play with your friends with the ball.
Another toy, and this is one I tried to describe to someone. So this is actually called, and they have a trademark. This is called electric football. It's by the company Tudor. We're going to put the link in the show notes. But this is, to describe it, you have small pieces, almost like little army men, but they are football men, and you have them on a field, on a board that vibrates, and you spend, I don't know, I'm going to exaggerate a little, but you spend 7 hours setting it up. And then you turn it on and it vibrates and they all start to move in different directions. And somehow there are rules that you go by to tell you what just happened. I tried to describe this to someone and they said, yes, I'm just going to play Madden football video game.
Try to explain this to a kid. Yeah, they have no idea what you're talking about. This is a sure way to sound ancient.
It's not only ancient, but it sounds like I have issues to make up something like this where it just starts to vibrate. There's no rhyme or reason as to any direction that any of the players move. And we still played.
Right. And you had that little football that you had to have in the guy's under his arm. And it was like, it was made out of like just the weirdest kind of cotton.
Like sponge. Yeah. Like spongy mess. It had like a fold in it and you put it underneath the guy's arm and he's the person with the football. And
it always tore. And that was the end of football. Then it went back in the box. And that was, I don't even know how you would get another one.
I don't know. I would love to have one of those. I used to play with that all the time. And part of it was my older cousins had that and I saw it and they played with it. And of course, anything my older cousins who I wanted to be like growing up, if they weren't into it, I wanted to do it, and but it was always so frustrating. The guy with the ball would run the wrong way.
Yes.
Always.
No one's blocking. The one person's just making circles somewhere, and you're like, all right, I guess our guy's hit there. There's like a car accident where the person was tackled, and you had to turn the vibrating off and set up the players again. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and by the way, Joe, I think you either raised or maybe we just talked about offline the Tecmo Bowl video game football, where if you selected Bo
Jackson. Yeah. Oh, yes, he's the greatest video game athlete of all time. I don't think that's even a debate with it. Bo Jackson on those Raiders in Tecmo Bowl was unstoppable. You call the play you're running, he could still get yards. He was in the Hall of Fame for video game athletes.
But do you guys remember the original Atari football back from like the 80s?
I do.
It looked like Space Invaders, for God's sake.
Yeah.
It was a rough start for video game football.
But I played that hour after hour after hour.
I remember it went vertically. It went up and down field instead of side to side, because then Mattel Electronics came and they were side to side. But I also remember it did look like Space Invaders, and it made a crunching sound constantly until something happened. And also because the technology at the time, they couldn't have a persistent image of one player. So it was always flashing all the time. So this crazy strip. So anyway, there we are. We've come a long way. I hope people realize how good they have it today with their, they have the Nerf football with the wing on the end I see people with it on the beach, and you could throw it a mile, and they have better video games. But let's talk about the IP of football. And I don't think, there's no better place to start really than one of the oldest, if not the oldest, football helmet patents, which goes back to 1927. I don't know, Joe and Gene, if you got to look at this, but it really does. You picture this as that leather helmet, in an old timey photograph where everyone's kind of down on one knee.
In some respects, if we went back to the leather helmet, you would have probably a lot fewer concussions, because you would certainly have a lot fewer guys using their head as a weapon.
Oh, sure.
I don't know. And to again cascade for a minute, I've gotten into watching UFC a lot, and UFC versus boxing UFC looks so much more vicious, but you're not getting hit constantly with like the boxing gloves are 1 pound, 16 ounces. I mean, that does real damage after a while. I wonder sometimes whether all this safety gear just puts people in worse places for their own safety.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, a lot of, going back to the early helmet compared to the helmets that we have now, every few years, the NFL comes out with a proposed different design for helmets, and then people are grandfathered into a helmet that they're comfortable using. But yeah, from the very early days, it sort of set us up this path where something used, hopefully for protections, winding up doing more damage with some of the spearing when people put their heads down with tackling. So
this is one of those areas. I mean, it's not unlike healthcare, but so much of the football technology, particularly helmets, of course, but padding too, is directed to safety. So the technology in this area and the advances, it's not as if they are often trying to make a more aerodynamic helmet. They're trying to make something that is safe.
Yeah. And one of the real problems, because I did an article a number of years ago about this, because I've always wondered why football helmets aren't more like motorcycle helmets, in that, motorcycle helmets, if you're in an accident, the motorcycle helmet's just thrown away because it's intended to be destroyed by absorbing as much of the impact as possible. So I've always wondered why football helmets aren't more like that. I think that could be a much safer helmet design. That's number one. But number two is the big problem I think the NFL has is a lot of the concussions are caused by a twisting motion of the head. And it doesn't take necessarily a lot of motion in order to sometimes create the concussion. I don't know. I think going backwards with going back to the leather helmets may be an advance, but that is going to seem counterintuitive.
Or, Gene, I like the idea of like a helmet exploding on big hits, where the player doesn't absorb that damage. And that would...
Could you imagine, like what that would say to fans, like how hard the hit was is, the guy's got to come out and get a new helmet on.
Get a new helmet. His helmet broke. Yeah, that would definitely add to the entertainment factor for everything.
I would think so.
That kind of sells itself, and I can imagine how many tweets would go out immediately with that, with the
Yeah.
GIF of the first
The
exploding
helmet
helmet. I mean, that would become something like people would communicate. Like anytime you blow someone's mind, you're going to send that. I kind of want it now.
Right.
But another patent we looked at was also an old-timey one, 1928. It's called the 10-yard line. They didn't actually invent the 10-yard line. They had measurements before 1928, but it really is the first down posts with some cord between them, and it's a way to mark off, the 10-yard line each time, and it's really hasn't changed very much.
Sadly.
No, it always amazes me. Like you're putting the ball down on a place and you're kind of eyeballing it up with the side judge telling the umpire, no, a little bit back, a little bit forward. And then when you at the critical point in time in the game, you're coming out with like this measurement and saying, oh, well, you missed by like half an inch.
This one, I'm going to show you with my hand how much you missed by. It's like, this is so imprecise. I can't believe we're still doing this.
Or they're going to do it. Do you remember in a couple of years ago where they pulled out like an index card?
The index card, yeah. Gene Sarator pulls out the index card. We're like, what is this? There's billions of dollars. There's so much money involved, gambling on this, people watching it. And we don't have chips in these footballs. We're relying on the chain gang to come out there, put the markers down, and we're taking measurements this way. It seems so backwards technology wise with all this stuff.
I suppose if everybody buys into the charade, then
Exactly.
I mean, because that's really what it is. It's like, I suppose what it is like, look, if you didn't really get 10 yards to the point where everybody agrees it's 10 yards, then don't be upset if we go the other way. It's
we have to come out here. We're doing our song and dance. We're going to see if you make it or not. But yeah, that's just part of the drama of watching football.
Right. It's like a soap opera.
On the 10-yard line, Pat and Joe, you had mentioned something from IPWatchdog.
Yeah, there's an article on IPWatchdog on an inventor in the Inventor Hall of Fame, Stan Honey, who invented the ability to watch the yellow line that marks off first downs when you're viewing football games from home. He filed a patent on that, and it's patent number US 6141060. So a US patent on this, and it's titled "A Method and Apparatus for Adding a Graphic Indication of a First Down to a Live Video of a Football Game." So a very precise title, and that came out in 1998. He was with a company called Sports Vision, and that revolutionized watching football at home. I remember the first game I saw with it, I was just like, I don't know how this didn't exist before.
No, I know. It's like black magic, but it's wonderful. It's and it's always frustrating now. You're watching a game and it's like the announcer says, well, I'm not sure he made it. And it's like, clearly he made it. The ball, everybody's across the yellow line. And it's like, then you realize, well, the announcer, particularly like when we're looking at like some of these college games and that don't have the greatest TV setups, or some of the marginal bowl games, the announcers are not given the best seats necessarily. And they're watching it live. They're not watching the TV monitor, so they have no idea. And it's like you at home say, "Oh no, clearly he's first down," or "Clearly he's nowhere near it."
Yeah, it was such a revolutionary, I guess, advancement to the viewing experience that we have watching football, and I think really everyone, whenever that machine's down, whenever they say, oh, no, the first down, sorry, it's not coming through your TV sets right now. If there's a problem with it, it's definitely noticeable. So it's impossible to watch football without it.
I want to shift gears a little bit to the trademark world. And the biggest story in the world of football, American football and trademarks, are some of the team names and issues, with the team names, some being a little bit antiquated, and some, there's been a real circus surrounding the Washington football team.
That's being polite.
Yeah, well, and by the way, no offense to circuses.
Right.
We'll do another episode on those and the technology of how they get all the clowns in the car. But Gene, also on IPWatchdog, there's a really interesting article on the Washington football team and kind of the journey of them picking a trademark, but then trying to protect it and where we are today. And the title is Washington Football Team's Trademark Journey Over the Bumps and Full Speed Ahead, is about the fact that when they did kind of, throw in the towel and they wanted to make a change and couldn't come up with one and said, okay, we're just call us the Washington football team. And they're having trouble protecting it. And you had also mentioned when we talked about this, getting ready for the podcast, that they might just stick with it and not care.
So I think that may be a real possibility because, after so long with the team saying, look, we're not changing our name, we're not changing our name, we're not changing our name. And then finally, over the last several years, it all comes to a head where they clearly had to change the name. I think that I could see the owner, Dan Snyder, particularly now saying, look, well, I'm just going to keep Washington football team, because it seems like the Washington football team, the value of that team is not particularly negatively impacted by not having a team name. They're still one of the most valuable franchises in the world for any sport.
Well, first of all, the trademark issue was that it's descriptive and it's going to be difficult to register it. It might even be generic. I mean, they're fighting now with the trademark office. What is the mascot now?
I don't even really know what their mascot is. Because whenever you see them referenced, they're just referenced as WFT. I find that even funnier in some ways because when I look at that really quick, my mind says WTF.
Yeah.
And that may actually be a better way to describe the Washington football team is WTF.
I actually, anything with FT to me is now NFT. So I think that there's a real business.
Well, I think that they missed an opportunity, right?
Yeah. Now we're 2 years removed from a name for, the team trying to decide what their next name is.
Yeah, Joe, my thing is if they go too long without a mascot, I wonder if it gets the other mascots nervous and they get together and say, hey, they're doing this without a mascot. This is really an issue. We can't have that. We need to get a mascot in there or they're going to finally realize they don't need one.
The mascot union, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's just weird with all the merchandise. That's obviously a driver with all this when teams change names, relocate, decide on different colors and things like that. I know the Washington football team colors are crimson and gold and they have songs and everything. Like it's very much a part of that particular football team. So I don't see that changing. So I didn't see this being when you decide you want to change your team name, why we're still waiting on the name now. So it's definitely interesting. It's weird because of all the major sports, they're the one team without a name. They're just the football team, and it'd be interesting if there are more of them. That there's a hockey team, and it just sort of continues along that way.
Well, I don't know how they could possibly wind up winning the argument that Washington football team is anything other than. If it's not generic, it clearly is descriptive.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. We are a football team. And where are you located? We're located in Washington. It's like, okay, that's
well, see, and I guess maybe their argument could be, just thinking we're actually not located. They're not located in Washington.
We play outside.
Yeah. Their practice facilities are actually in Virginia. But then you get into the whole question about whether it's misdescriptive and it couldn't be registered for that reason.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Hello, listeners of this episode of IP Goes Pop. This is actually an insert or a drop-in, as they say. When we recorded this original episode, the name of the Washington football team was the Washington football team. And well, between recording and releasing this episode, the Washington football team did, in fact, announced their official name change. I'm going to throw it over to Joe Gushue for the big announcement. Drum roll.
Yes, we have a name now. The Washington football team will be known as the Washington Commanders.
It is inspiring reactions. I will say that. I'm not going to.
Oh, yes. After years of workshopping, this has definitely been announced as a new name today, for sure. And it's definitely getting a reaction on the internet. But it looks like we're with the Commanders, and we're going to get more used to it as we move forward.
I guess, Joe, historically, I'm wondering if this is reminiscent of any other football team names that are in the, I guess, kind of a military theme.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned this, not necessarily in the football space, but I was preparing for the episode, and some of our listeners may be aware that the Major League Baseball team in Cleveland has rebranded for this upcoming season. They're now going to be called the Guardians. And that process went very quickly. And apparently, the Washington football team executive spoke with the Cleveland baseball team about their rebrand. And Washington took a little bit longer, but arrived at a very similar name to what the Cleveland Guardians are with the Washington Commanders.
It's kind of strange. I know everything's, these are our opinions only. These aren't official, but I really like Guardians. And I don't know where maybe it's Guardians of the Galaxy, but in the scheme of things, I don't know if Guardians are higher than Commanders or Commanders would command Guardians. But I will say I jumped on the U.S. Trademark Office website and did a search. There are a couple marks. There's no filing yet, but I'm really curious. There is a mark for Commanders Classic for some apparel in the football realm, and also for Commanders Classic is registered for entertainment services, namely organizing, promoting, and staging annual intercollegiate football games, where the entertainment services are sold in connection with the football competitions between U.S. military academies. None of the foregoing relate to hunting or fishing. So I think there was a Commander Classic. And also, these are now abandoned or dead trademark applications for San Antonio Commanders, which was an American football franchise with the Alliance of American Football, or AAF. Joe, do you know anything about the AAF?
I do not, Mike. No, that is very interesting, though, because the Commanders, it sounds like a fake name of a team. So we just got to get used to it. Again, this is the first day we're hearing it. But I did see that the Commander is actually a rank in the Navy. So by naming it this way, the Washington football team may have upset some of the members of the Army with this. But I guess looking at the name itself, maybe the Commander-in-Chief being in Washington, that's part of it. But now all of the professional sport teams in Washington are named after something like this. We have now the Commanders, we have the Wizards, and we have the Nationals. So
there's all new names. There's really no line through any of the names. The color scheme is very, I think, traditional. The former Washington football team color scheme, of course, they're keeping that. They have a logo now, which is kind of a shadowed W, with less focus on the Commander part and more on the Washington part.
Another thing, Mike, that they were quite proud of in the press release today was the crest that they've released, which shows that W logo that you spoke about, the 3 stars, which look similar to the Tennessee Titans. Also, the year the franchise was founded, 1932, completing the crest. And then one thing that the internet is calling out today in particular is the years that are listed on the outside of the crest for when the Washington franchise won football championships. And they put the year of the championship. So when the Super Bowl was held, so in January, now in recent times it's more February, but the football team's always referred to as the team that played the regular season. So a lot of people are, upset about that also, because it's not really the team that won it. It's more or less the year that the Super Bowl was won in, and which isn't really how you refer to football teams.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think you nailed it, Joe, with your comment, because I feel like the Commanders are, if you were watching the movie Any Given Sunday and it was, they were playing another team, they would be, or the Commanders are in The Replacements with Keanu Reeves.
Mhm.
They would be playing the Washington Commanders. But again, I think it's a matter of getting used to it. And like all things, I'm sure that we will, and it will pervade the public consciousness and make its way into our pop culture. Certainly, they now have a brand. I'm curious to see how they will register it. But for Joe and I at IP Goes Pop, enjoy the rest of this episode, or we hope you enjoyed the rest of this episode and that you listened. And we'll head back to the gridiron now. Thank you. Shifting gears a little bit more to kind of more copyright and design, the name Cheesehead is associated with what franchise?
Yeah, the Green Bay Packers.
So there's a company, Foamation, who, if you ever watch the Green Bay Packers and you ever watch one of their games, you will see people wearing the Cheesehead, the giant cheese-shaped hat, showing their devotion. I'm sure they'll also have their face and or body painted.
Yeah.
And that company, went pretty far to try to protect. There was actually a lawsuit back in 1997. At that time, they couldn't prove copyright protection in it as a utilitarian object in this particular case. And they hadn't yet used it long enough to protect it in trade dress. But they do now have a trademark registration. We're going to post a link to it. They have a trademark registration on a novelty hat that is literally just a giant block of cheese, or in the shape of a block of cheese. So the company does offer many different cheese-shaped hats, but certainly the infamous wedge one is on the principal register, and they have a stranglehold, if you will, on the cheese-shaped hat mark.
That's just hilarious. You can't make this stuff up, NFL fans are creative too. I remember playing the Green Bay Packers. It was I forget which team it was. It was I want to say it was against the Philadelphia Eagles. They were playing the Eagles, and in the stands they had people wearing gigantic hats that were giant cheese graters.
Oh, that's great.
And we also have the cheese steak heads in Philadelphia now, so you'll see them pop up in
or the cream cheese, like the Philadelphia cream cheese box.
A lot of health food coming out of our city.
It's all fun, but if they can get protection on the Cheesehead, more power to them, because those Green Bay Packer fans, they are just some of the most rabid and dedicated fans in the world.
Any opportunity, of course. I remember there was, Joe, you'll probably remember this, but you'll probably have more of the facts of it that I do. 4th and 26, Freddie Mitchell, the next day, walking to our law firm from the train, every corner T-shirts that said 4th and 26. That's all they said, or 4/26. So these things, they happen quickly. It's kind of a gold rush mentality. But if it sticks, you could have, and I believe that Freddie Mitchell himself probably still has that either on a gold chain or a ring or his website. I just have this recollection that it's, but again, that becomes like Gene said. Gene, you said this is about, earlier we talked about what's branding. So if you can find that niche and, here's one of our national pastimes and make it stick, you really have something there.
No, that's absolutely true. And one of the trademark issues that I don't think we had previously talked about, but that as we're talking about trademarks, it popped in my mind, and it's hard to not think about it, particularly at this time of the season, is the question about whether or not the term Super Bowl is actually still something that is really a trademark or not. The NFL seems to think so. But, you got to be careful with trademarks. You can't, something that is a noun is not a trademark. And if it is the Super Bowl, then it's no longer a trademark. And I think pretty much everybody calls it the Super Bowl. And I know the NFL goes out of their way to prevent anybody. Yeah, it's got to be the big game. And, and it really, I just can't imagine that if the NFL sued anybody that used the term Super Bowl, that the NFL would win, at least on the law. But who knows? So I think a lot of that is just people wanting to stay in the good graces of the NFL and not create a problem. And then also a lot of people just don't want to get sued, don't want to create any issues and so forth. So a word to the wise, if you have your trademark out there, for goodness sake, don't let it become generic like the NFL has done with Super Bowl. Because if you don't have an NFL sized budget, that really, really becomes the death knell.
Police that, yeah. It has to be the big game for everyone else.
Yeah, but let me ask you, Gene. So it almost now, though, seems awkward to try to use it in a trademark sense, which what we're talking about is you want to use your trademark and then sometimes you want to follow it with the generic terms. So it would be Band-Aid brand adhesive bandages. So it would be what? Super Bowl something, Super Bowl.
Yeah, it'd have to be like Super Bowl championship game.
There you go. Yeah. God, boy, that sounds terrible.
It does, and it's their own fault. They've allowed it to happen. But, and those types of issues almost never come up, but they have come up. I mean, because things like trampoline and kerosene and escalator, they were all once trademarks.
It's almost impossible to think about today, but Microsoft and Linux, whoever owned Linux, fought over whether the term Windows, when a window first came out, you open a window on your computer, whether Windows was generic. And you almost can't fathom it today. Joe, final thoughts on the American sport of football.
I hope everyone has all their snacks and their food options selected for the Super Bowl this weekend. I know I will be ready and enjoy the game, and I hope everyone. I hope it's close.
Gene, any final thoughts? I'll leave it like this. What we will be eating at our Super Bowl party will be my famous chili. Chili is like probably the perfect Super Bowl food. It's great for this time of year when it's a little bit colder, and it goes well with everything. It goes well with chips, and then you could use it later on some baked potatoes, or you could put it on hot dogs or sausage. It's the perfect winter food. So it's
I like Joe. I am wishing the two combatant teams best of luck. May the best team win, unless it is the team that I am rooting for, in which case they should win. But Gene, thank you so much. I hope you come back again. There were at least 3 or 4 different topics that you threw out, which would be great for episodes in the future if you could come back. Joe, thank you as always to our listeners. Hope you make your first down. We'll see you next time on IP Goes Pop.
The IP Goes Pop podcast series is created and produced by Volpe Koenig, an intellectual property law firm based in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Visit us at vklaw.com.